So I've been making and playing Pokemon ROM hacks for about 10 years, and during this time I've seen almost everything change. ROM hacks look, play, sound, and feel nothing like they did when I first started. But one of the few constants, one of the few things that I've seen the whole time is Johto ports and remakes on the Gen 3 engine. And truth be told, I've wondered how necessary these hacks have been the whole time. Especially once HeartGold and Soul Silver came out. HeartGold and Soul Silver was my first Pokemon game, right? And one would think that once HeartGold and Soul Silver was announced in 2009 and released in America in 2010, that there really wasn't much of a need to actually have a Johto game on the Gen 3 engine if it's in a later gen's engine. So in this video, I want to take a look at all the Gen 3 Johto hacks and analyze and discuss why I think they were actually made. So the Johto ports that make the most sense to me are the ones that came out before HeartGold and Soul Silver were released. The first one, and one of the most famous old ancient ROM hacks, is Pokemon Shiny Gold made by Zell. This hack is so old that the videos it links are in 144p. However, this was a really important ROM hack at the time. It was abandoned and then since has been finished by the actual GOAT Hacks Repairman. It's in my opinion still playable if you want to play a really old school ROM hack. This was the first time I've seen a hack of a hack released and enjoyed and played by the public. In the case of Shiny Gold X, it was a difficulty mod I do not think made by Zell himself. That was actually just supposed to make the hack harder. It was popular, I saw it played on YouTube back in the day. These kind of reduxes I see a lot nowadays. Also in 2006, but I think maybe a bit later, was a hack I completely forgot about, Pokemon Crystal Shards. This hack was made by Agent Crusader and was more of a crystal focused game than a gold and silver focused game. I guess that's what it prided itself in back in the day. I don't really have much to say about this one, I kind of forgot it existed. So now I have the hack that I probably have the most to say about, Pokemon CrystalDust. This hack's Poke Community thread was made in 2010. I don't have the full timeline for some of these games, but this is one of the few hacks where the dev is actually just completely still around and easy to contact. So I messaged Sierra Affinity and she said, CrystalDust was basically inspired by my frustrations with HeartGold and how much it changed. I remember being okay with it right up until the point where I was about to enter Goldenrod City, which had my favorite track of the whole game, and then it just didn't feel like a big city theme. And also dissatisfaction with other remakes of the era. And then she proceeded to mention Shiny Gold, Liquid Crystal, and Crystal Shards. She mentioned Shiny Gold was never finished, Liquid Crystal took way too many liberties and fanficked the hell out of it, Crystal Shards was buggy and short. She mentioned loving Pokemon Gold and that being the first Pokemon game she finished, and it's clear that CrystalDust took the approach of having the most polished aesthetic. Looking back, a lot of these old hacks look and play a lot like their time, with all these limitations that the ROM hacking scene had at that moment. And truth be told, there wasn't really any other Pokemon games to demake or remake at this point. Sinnoh, Unova, and Kalos at this point were pretty ambitious to make, especially considering a lot of hack devs are teenagers. Bringing down the hardware of the DS and the 3DS is simply just way harder than doing it for a Game Boy Color game to a GBA game. There was a hack I remember being really excited about, Pokemon Platinum Red and Blue by GoGoJTech. This was an eventually abandoned ROM hack that was really promising at the time. Visually, music-wise, gameplay-wise, it played exactly like the original Platinum and was really cool to see, brought down onto the GBA hardware. Unfortunately, that hack went nowhere, and I feel like there wasn't really anything else for people to remake at this early 2010s moment, so it kind of made sense. And I assume there's some friendly competition, seeing other people make a hack that's kind of similar to yours, but you're trying to make it the best. It kind of made sense that this was the case at the time, I guess. Anyway, speaking of competition and speaking of Liquid Crystal, Pokemon Liquid Crystal. This hack was released in 2011, and out of all the hacks we've covered so far, it's definitely the least faithful. It adds a lot of new story and dialogue and all that kind of stuff. It added the black and white experience curve, the physical special split, and I'd say has the most Hoenn Pokemon out of all these ones that we've covered. This hack was super popular in the early to mid 2010s, and there were debates that honestly were had about this hack versus CrystalDust. And I can't cover this game and not show y'all the fucking Victory Road theme. Anyways, yeah, this is an older hack that I would say probably has aged a little worse than CrystalDust. And whenever I think of this game, I always think of how it's raining all the time. Apparently because it's based off Japan's real world weather, I guess. I don't know. This hack also has a bunch of different versions with reduxes and stuff, with different other hack devs that tried to make their own version of it after the game was finished. The ones I could find were Pokemon Crystal Advance and Pokemon Crystal Advance Redux. So I've talked about these games pretty chronologically at this point, but now I'm kind of going to break that. Pokemon FireGold was released in 2022. The hack dev Black Fragrant was inspired by Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. This game is inspired by vanilla a lot, but it's not perfectly replicating it. I'm not totally sure what this game's niche is, to be honest. The next two games I'm going to talk about are way different than the original Johto games. I will say though, it's noticeably more modern and has a lot of modern Pokemon and mechanics in it. Pokemon GS Chronicles was a game that started in 2014 that got a lot of traction later on. This game is very graphically flashy, looking very similar to Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver. This game is more of a Johto reboot and reimagining more than like a vanilla remake. I'd say this hack is the most ambitious that I've covered so far. It totally upgrades the graphics and sound and also has all these new story elements and gameplay elements. And lastly, we have the newest Johto GBA hack, Pokemon Scorched Silver. This hack made by Sloot is a sequel to the Gold and Silver games. It has a lot of custom areas and just custom stuff that I've seen from it. This hack is also an Emerald hack that unapologetically uses the Hoenn aesthetic. The other hacks I mentioned are kind of based off the Fire Red aesthetic, whether that be graphics or music. From an outside view, Scorched Silver seems a lot like GS Chronicles, like an ambitious reimagining sequel with, new graphics and all that stuff. And yeah, that's all the GBA Johto hacks. I honestly kind of want to have a discussion on why there's so many of these and why people have such different takes on them and why people haven't demade other games or remade other games. But yeah, I'm going to leave the Reddit thread that I post this video in the comments and in the description, or you can chat in the comments. Would love to hear more from everyone. Thank you for getting this far in the video. Drop a like, drop a comment, drop a sub. I appreciate all that more than you even know. And peace.